that are built into the game that gives you a sense of mastery as you move from one level to the next, a sense of autonomy, a sense of, and also feedback that you get at every level. So these are some elements that make a game very addictive, right? And I've seen many people, my wife included, she got addicted to Fishwell and she could play this hours on end. And that got me thinking, if games are able to do that using these game elements, how about taking some of these elements and apply to non-game context where people have resistance to doing things? I'm sure there are a lot of people here who have resistance to going to a gym, right? We all make up that decision on January 1st that this year I'm going to finally make it. By the end of first week, that resolution you have made has already been broken. So how cool would that be if we take some of those game elements and apply it to real world situations which are non-game like? And how do you bring about that stickiness, right? So that's the core essence of it. So engagement is one of the core reasons why you would want to gamify anything. And beyond that, drawing people in, and you can do a lot of analytics after that. So that's gamification, use of points, badges, leaderboards, going into deeper aspects of gaming, levels, story plays, role plays. So that's gamification. Now there is another variant of this called game-based learning, which is not to be confused with gamification. Game-based learning is where you might want to take up, let's say, a Farmville, have people play the game, and then you ask interesting questions about rural economics. To use a game, but you use that as a vehicle to talk about some serious learning outcome. And simulations are a different category. Simulations are essentially a replica or a model of the real world in a simplified fashion, which will give the learner an ability to experience reality in a safe learning environment, right? So I just want to get these terms out of the way before we get into the conversation. So it's my privilege to be sharing the stage with some eminent speakers here. So without much further ado, I'm going to go back to my seat and get the conversation started. The format will be that we will discuss a few key questions and then we'll open it up to you for any questions that you may have. Yeah?
Working.
All right, so we'll get started with Ashu here. And at Jabong, they've done a lot of interesting things around gamification. So Ashu, the question is for you. What actually prompted you to look at gamification to engage talent and do deeper things with it?
Okay. Let me ask this question to the audience here. You have been sitting here for last maybe how many hours here? And you must be scratching your head, what's happening with me? It's so boring sitting in the classroom. And I have been the victim of same syndrome when I was head of training, right? And that's where I realized that, just sheer delivering classroom training programs is a waste of time. And in contrary, it's like punishment to the people who are attending these classes. So that was my first reality test of, the moment of truth. And then I thought that how we can make it more interesting. And as HR evolved, and as I, became more mature, I felt that the biggest learning is when you involve people. And we call it being head of training in Honda and different organizations. I realized that most powerful learning is called experiential learning. And it goes like that. If you tell a person, he may forget. He may not remember that. If you teach him, he may remember a part of it. But you involve a person, he may learn. And that's the most powerful. And if you intertwine with, some interesting, games or gamification, as you may call it, and involve people, and they do something and they learn, that becomes very, very interesting. And a work without a play becomes very, very dull. And the recent finding in I was doing some research work, and it was, to me, is an eye-opener. Most of the CEOs of the world, this is an interesting fact for you. Most of the top guns of the corporate world, they want to come out from the clutter and play some games during their, or be part of gamification to ensure that they're involved in the business and get motivated. And that's the way the world is moving. Okay, that's my few thoughts.
Sure. That's a great start. So I just want to add something to what Ashu just mentioned. The ex-CIO of Starbucks, okay, so he was just 32 years old and he was sitting inside the Fortune 500 boardroom. Somebody asked him, hey, where did you pick up these leadership skills? So you don't have gray hair. And our experience tells us that you need to have gray hair to be able to deal with complexities of the real world. Where did you pick up these leadership skills from? Guess what his answer was? So he said, I am a World of Warcraft fanatic, right? So there's a massively online multiplayer game, and he picked up his leadership skills from a game, and that helped him translate those skills that he acquired from a game to a real life context, right? So gaming can be quite useful for developing some of these skills. So thanks for the
Just
point.
to add here, again, one of the very important facts which came my way, that when you talk about learning, 70% of learning happens when you do it by yourself. Okay, so out of 100%, 70% happens when you do it by yourself. 20% happens when you see others doing it. And you feel that, I need to do it like that, and you try to copy that or try to learn from that. So 90% of the learning in your learning curve path happens through experiential learning.
Sure.
That's so powerful.
Sure. Over to you, Tarun. So what has been your experience? Yeah, what has been your experience with gamification? What are some needs that you saw? And what are the major drivers for adopting gamification in your organization?
So we look more outside inside. So we're an organization that provides recruitment solutions to larger players across diverse industries. So if you, some stats to add to what you just said about the billions of hours we spend on gaming is interesting, is that, and there's a myth that majorly gamification is used in IT technology companies or IT backbone companies, but that is not the fact at all. I was just discussing with the panelists a little while earlier that L'Oreal itself is using gamification and now you can? Yeah, so L'Oreal itself is using gamification and actually designing and coming out with colors of lipsticks. So another stat to add to the data that you gave me is that about 70% of Indian companies are actually using gamification, about 65% when it comes to employee engagement, 25% are using it for hiring, and the rest across R&R and actually employee development. What we realized as an organization about 4-5 years back is that, for example, if you take hiring into perspective, there is a paper CV, great pedigree, great experience, has all the skill sets when it comes to the paper CV, but how well can he apply it in the real world? How do I assess him for that? That is where gamification started coming into the hiring process, whether it's a Java professional getting assessed as to how great are his coding skills, whether it's a marketing professional giving a case study as to how will he solve a problem. At various stages, you were actually taking away the monotony of the hiring process, and you were also putting some fun into it, and the individual at the other end of the spectrum was also getting assessed. So this industry is evolving, and you cannot think that you can sit in one corner of the world and know it all. We have to keep up with regards to the changes that are happening, and I think gamification is becoming a large part and a large play of everything that is about an employee from the time he comes into the organization, retaining him, and when he actually leaves you. That is my two bits to start off.
All right, great. Sandeep, over to you.
Thanks. So my experience with gamification, I will start, where everybody should start, with themselves, right? This is my ongoing current experimentation with gamification. For those of you who may have not seen this, this is one of the most inexpensive fitness bands that come in the market. It's a Xiaomi band. And I've got a game going between myself and my wife. What this band does is it tracks how many steps you take in a day, and it also tracks how well you sleep in the night, right? Deep sleep versus light sleep, etc. So what's been happening is that my wife has been beating me hollow in the number of steps in the day, and I've been beating her hollow in the sleep. So, it's a win-win. Coming back, by the way, to the more serious settings, I'll give you some of my experiences in Accenture, both in terms of what is it that we do within Accenture, using the mechanics of gaming, game mechanics or game principles, as well as a lot of the work we do with our clients. But really at the core of, I guess, what my co-panelists were also talking about and what we're really looking at is that the biggest challenge, I think, in tons after tons of research has been that getting people to change their mindset and therefore change behavior has been a challenge which not many organizations have been able to do very easily. So that getting behavior change, and not just change in behavior, but actually sustaining that change in behavior over a period of time. Gamification as a principle has been there for quite some time. I think the first recorded gamification was an organization called SNH in the US, which used to give you stamps. It was something like a loyalty program. So many of us participate in various loyalty programs, be it credit cards, be it airline, frequent flyers, etc. Now, coming in from there, this concept has really evolved a lot given the research, recent research that has happened around understanding of the human brain and neuroscience. If we really look at why is it that game playing is such a big, process to impact behavior change, we need to understand that the human brain if you look at it, there's an allegory you can use. It's like, a person sitting on an elephant going on a path. And we have three parts of the brain. The new brain, which is basically the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's like the human sitting on the elephant. The elephant itself is basically called the middle brain, or the brain which is actually more of a mammalian brain which has evolved over the years. Now, what research has shown is that just having rational logic and understanding why the change should happen is not good enough for people to actually make a behavioral change and sustain it. A proper change requires change in terms of the rational logic plus the emotional change. That's the reason that any gamification principle, when the actual gaming process happens, now be it a video game, be it an external game, experiential learning, etc., what happens is the entire process releases a hormone called dopamine. For those of us who are addicted to Candy Crush Saga or any of the other games, it does become an addiction, and it's actually a chemical addiction to a hormone called dopamine, which makes us feel nice, right? And when we actually go through this path, that's what helps us sustain and come back. So it's anything that we do which helps us to get call to action, take the action, and get feedback. Now, coming back to the corporate setting, in Accenture, for example, we use this principle of sustained behavioral change across the entire employee life cycle. It could be from hire to retire. I mean, learning was definitely one of the areas, but it's no longer the main area, because if you look at it, you need to drive behavior change to be able to get people on board with you under various circumstances. So, for example, if you visit our site, you will find there's a game called Sky Journey for people who are actually getting recruited on pre-recruitment and onboarding. We have a gaming for collaboration with a program called at A3. I'll not get into the details of that. For those of you who are followers on Twitter, I've just some time back shared it on Twitter. There's a detailed presentation. I'm not going to spend time on that. So it's basically about getting people to collaborate across geographies. Now, the unique challenge that we have as an organization, we are about 330,000 employees spread across. And just to give you an example, I'm in a role, I'm based in India. My role has nothing to do with India as a geography, It's a global role. My team is spread across USA, Argentina, India, and not in Gurgaon, in different cities in India. I'm in Gurgaon. Now, we still have the similar dynamics of a team to get them motivated, to get them to work, right? That's where the role of digital technologies really comes into play big time. Now, if you look at two factors. One is the fact that gaming has become more and more entertainment of choice for Generation X, Generation Y. Generation Y is definitely people who you would define as 35 years or less. I'm Generation X, by the way, so I'm not telling you my age, but yeah, something like that. So the people who are in that Generation Y, that plus the opportunity that digital provides, both put together has actually really brought in that, point where gamification has become a tool. So we have done this not only for ourselves, like I said, within Accenture across the entire life cycle, but with our clients to, look at helping them achieve behavioral changes. We've actually come up with a process called a 30-day challenge, which we use. It's one of our proprietary processes of how we actually help our clients manage change in a 30-day cycle using gaming principles to be able to create sustained, change. So just some starters of where it is that, just to answer your question at this point in time.
Great. That's hopefully, that set the context really well, three different perspectives on how they've used gamification in their own organizations. So I'm going to quickly summarize what was just discussed, right? So gamification is a great way for enforcing or bringing about behavioral change. Right? Behavioral change doesn't happen only through cognitive inputs. Just by telling a person something, behavioral change doesn't happen. You need to be sufficiently motivated, and you need to have the skills to be able to cope up with that change as well. So it's the head, heart, and the hand. All three have to be moved in a particular direction for change to be sustainable. I think that's what I'm picking up from here. And the second is the power of habit. There's a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, where he speaks about this whole loop of getting a cue, going into a routine, and then getting a reward. So habit is essentially that cycle of responding to a cue, doing something, and getting a reward, right? And that was the other thing that gamification effectively does by giving you exposure to something, getting you into a routine, and giving you a reward in the end. So what I want to understand from the panelists now is, what are some behavioral changes that you have been able to bring into your organizations using gamification?
Just to add here what you said, Jay. Now, look at how change happens as a phenomenon. Change happens when you feel there's a need for change. As simply put, nobody under the earth can change you as a person. Is that right? By going through sermons or lectures and so on and so forth, you will never change. How many of you go to movies? I'm sure you all see movies, right? In the beginning, you have a disclaimer. धूम्रपान करने से कर्क रोग होता है. Have you seen that? People, somebody strikes so hard, and he feels that, okay, there's a need for change. So that's the beauty of gamification. You relate with the learning, you experience it by yourself, and then you bring it in your own, behavior. The question you asked that what behavior changes we want to induce in our employees, the biggest, benefit for me as an organization, we use, experience learning in a big way in Jabong. One is surely in the area of achievement motivation. When we install different gamification programs, right from hiring, I'm not going to specifics, learning and development, so on and so forth, even in my culture assimilation programs, people see that, if I do that, there is some reward, there's some competition we, bring in that, and they compete with each other. And the biggest change I have seen that they want to outdo others. And in course of that, we see behavior changing. Second point, is very big plus for us as an organization is in the area of collaboration. So we make teams and make them compete with each other. And I see that a lot of cross-functional silos get dissolved. That's the biggest learning for me. Okay? I think let's talk about two. For me, as an organization, has been biggest achievement, and I'm a great proponent, great advocate of this sort of learning in the organization.
Great, thank you. So Tarun, from your experience, what are some behavioral changes that you've been able to bring about using gamification?
So I'll take them on the two heads again. One is the behavior change with regards to when I'm in the hiring cycle. One is the behavior change when I'm talking about engaging my employees. There are two parts to it. Now, if you look at the typical hiring process, just in time doesn't work anymore, in the sense that I have, as an HR manager, have a challenge. The line is after me to hire 100 people in the next 1 month. Unless you have what you call a virtual bench, it is very difficult to fulfill. Now, how do you create a virtual bench? As vehemently as we or organizations as HR managers are filtering out candidates, the candidate on the outside is also as vehemently filtering out organizations. So if I am, as a candidate, completely naked on the social footprint, you can see me on LinkedIn, you can see me on Facebook, I am choosing organizations today, and most of the better ones are actually the ones who are passive, who are not looking for a job. How do I excite him and change his behavior and have him look at my organization as a preferred destination? So what happens through gamification and certain interventions? For example, recently we did something called Code Gladiator nationally. It was the largest format where the best of coders of one organization, like an Accenture, were pitted against Capgemini, were pitted against Jabong, and we were actually felicitating the best talent in the country. What was happening in the background was that we realized, and by behavior and by influence, that the best of talent need not be the best pedigree. We had certain small organizations where we had the best PHP coders, the Java coders, and talent was getting discovered. What was also happening in the process, and I'll take a leaf from what he mentioned about that hormone, these were typically people who like to compete, who like to showcase their skills, tell their community that we are better than the others, and in the process there was an organization sitting at the back end assessing them and realizing that these are the kind of people I want to hire, and they're necessarily not from the IITs and the IIMs and the RITs. Now I'll move to the engagement side with regards to organization. It's an employee for me, for example, goes through the whole cycle. If you put him through any kind of an R&R which is mundane, which is not out of the box, he will think of something. And again, I come back to that part of the hormone. An engaged employee is a happy employee. If through gamification I can get that particular hormone excited and have him actually feel great and good about some differentiated, gamification plans I have within the organization, that it helps. So on both sides, when it comes to hiring, when it comes to engaging employees, I think gamification to a large extent influences behavior of a happy employee base and a guy sitting outside looking at your organization in a different light altogether. That's my input about behavior.
Great perspective of gamification being used outside as well as inside. Okay, Sandeep, over to you.
Thanks. That's very interesting examples. I can come back to what I was mentioning earlier, couple of examples. One, I'll take an example of how Accenture is doing it for, how we are doing it for ourselves within Accenture. And one example of one of the cases which was recently published about how we did it for a client. Within Accenture, we have this program which I was mentioning called the A3 program. It's basically called the Ad Agnitio Award. It basically talks about, it basically is Latin for sharing knowledge award. We are a professional services, it's basically a services organization. Most of what we do and the work we do is about getting the best of what our people have in terms of knowledge and capabilities to our clients. So what is really critical to business is to ensure that the knowledge not only is something which is shared across the organization, but collaboration is really a critical aspect of what we bring to our clients every day. One of the big advantages that Accenture has is that it's a one global organization, and it's one of the core reasons behind that is that it has the ability to bring in people across business units, across geographies to a client situation at a particular time. Now, for that to be supercharged by ensuring that the collaboration happens in a smooth manner, one of the programs that was started sometime around 2009 was this A3 award. the key aspect was to ensure how is it that we drive collaboration across geographies, across business units. Now, what tends to happen in many professional services organizations is that there would be people who would be doing great work. A lot of that knowledge would be remaining with that person or in their laptops, on hard drives, right? Secondly, a lot of what people do share might actually remain within the network of a particular person, right? Rather than actually getting organization wide. Now, this same thing was actually put into a game design, wherein we had this entire, so if you look at it as a pyramid, there were three things there. First, the bottom of the pyramid was about the game components, which is about things like leaderboards, points, badges, right? Making it like a game, like we would play Candy Crush Saga. Having points, which, the second part of the pyramid was basically about what the person needs to do. So actions such as, challenges that need to be completed, right? Reaching a level, so action aspects. And the third and the most important aspect is the purpose. The purpose, and one of the driving principles behind that was about status, about achieving a certain recognition across peers, across the organization, to become what you are known as a community champion. Now, this was built in, and what we found is over a period of about this 3 or 4 years, close to 5 years now, the impact that has happened with, and across so obviously the first takers were people who were the generation Y, like I mentioned, the people who used to gaming, that happened. But what really tended to happen over a period of time, as this became more of an ongoing part of the way a person works. In your people personal profile page, you would actually see who is it that who's a lurker in terms of being a person who shares information to versus who's a influencer, who's a rock star, who's a guru. So you have these various status levels, and from all across levels, to senior levels, people actually started talking about, oh, my next step is I'm actually now looking at becoming an influencer. Now I'm trying to hit for a rock star or a guru in the next quarter. And so that sort of buzz which actually led to engagement, not only in just getting people engaged. The real importance was, because the entire social learning was based on this, metrics became very powerful. So, for example, if I in my team want to create a program on, say, on learning, we create what are the latest learning research, and we came up with a program called the Learning Decathlon, which had 10 events that people had to actually go through to achieve the award. We used the base of this program, so everything which was measured, how many people are participating at what time, who are the people who are able to make the changes, to actually getting this as one of the inputs to the performance management system. So this is one example of one internal gamification. Now, similarly, we do a lot of designing of these gamification for some of our clients. We recently did one for one of the European banks, where it was a bank which was moving from a culture which was a typical banking culture to a digital banking culture, right? Where they wanted to engage their customers in a digital manner. Now, there again, the question was, how is it that we actually make this happen in a quick turnaround time? So that's where we use the model that we have of a 30-day challenge. And the reason behind having 30 days is that, again, based on the principles of neuroscience and research, it's about moving away from, just the rational thinking to our habits and programming that. That is the minimum amount of time that can be done, given the power of technology that can support it, along with the purpose, the strength of the purpose that's created. So, just to give you an example, we are not, so technology is not that important. Coming back to the point like some of my co-colleagues, co-panelists made.